So I was watching Status Quo's viewing and reporting on the Bernie Sanders campaign rally in Los Angeles today, and that was quite a good rally. And I think the Latinx community is going to really pull Bernie Sanders over the line, unless, of course, the Democratic Party, the DNC, do their very best, which they're doing, to steal this away from Bernie Sanders. And it seems like between Pete Buttigieg dropping out, even though he has way more billionaire backers than Elizabeth Warren, and he probably is more popular in some ways than Elizabeth Warren, in some regards, he's dropped out, and Elizabeth Warren is staying in, even though she has no path to victory. Which the speculation is that the intention is to take votes away, to take votes away from Bernie Sanders. You know, it's sort of despicable, really. And Elizabeth Warren has been running down Bernie Sanders and saying that he's done nothing in his 30 years. So, you know, this is just one big, it's one big sort of a conspiracy, but it's out in the open, really. It's not anything that's closeted. It's all out in the open, and even the delegates have said actually that if Bernie Sanders, you know, they would rather, this is their words, they would rather damage the Democratic Party that, in an attempt to stop, you know, if it meant stopping Sanders.
Leaders who will serve as superdelegates at the party's nominating convention in July, and found the vast majority are so opposed to Sanders' candidacy they're willing to risk damage to the Democratic Party. Of 93 superdelegates surveyed by the Times, nearly all said they would vote against Sanders in a brokered convention if Sanders were to arrive with a plurality and not a majority of pledged delegates. Many of the superdelegates are corporate lobbyists with healthcare clients opposing Sanders' Medicare for All legislation. The Intercept's Lee Fong reports one of them, Democratic National Committee member William Owen, donated exclusively to Republican Senate candidates during the last election cycle, including an $8,500 contribution to a joint fundraising committee designed to benefit Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Owen is backing former Vice President Joe Biden for the Democratic nomination in 2020.
Drop out. Even though he's such a latecomer, Johnny come lately, he's just like, Klobuchar, Buttigieg, and Biden should drop out and just let me take on Bernie. And all of this is coming down to not necessarily Bloomberg winning the nomination. We already know at the rate that Bernie is crushing it in the first 3 primary states and hopefully get California soon on Super Tuesday, we already know that Bloomberg is not going to get the majority of delegates or the majority of votes. That's not what this is about. This is about a contested convention. This is about Bloomberg, Biden, Buttigieg, Warren, Klobuchar staying in the race as long as possible to steal delegates, to siphon energy and siphon votes and Steyer from Bernie. So A, they can build up that false argument and false equivalency that centrists put together have more power and interest than someone like Bernie Sanders does, which is totally fake. Bernie Sanders is pulling in an entirely new base of the voting population that you can't account for. But also to say that Bernie doesn't have a majority of the delegates and he only has a plurality of the delegates at the convention. And that's when they're going to try to openly steal it. If Bernie doesn't crush it completely and just sweep victories across the entire electoral arena, they are going to do everything that they can. And this isn't hidden. We don't need a DNC leak to tell us this. This is totally open. This is what they're saying every day on corporate media and in their speeches, that they are not going to let someone like Bernie take the nomination, that it's too dangerous to let Bernie take the nomination. And you saw them all answer at the debate. They're all against democracy. They will all pledge to usurp that nomination and usurp that candidacy from Bernie Sanders, even if he does get the majority of delegates and votes, which you would think in a democracy, that means that he has clear consensus from the electorate. So that's what this is. And a report in Politico confirmed that this is what Bloomberg is doing. That Bloomberg is courting the superdelegates. He is plotting alongside Biden and Buttigieg to steal the nomination on the second ballot. So keep that in mind. He's in this race to spoil it as much as he can, not to win, just to spoil it. On one hand, it's kind of cartoonish that he is propped up as kind of the antithesis of what Bernie embodies, challenging the oligarchy, challenging billionaires, challenging the Democratic establishment. He embodies the worst aspects of the Democratic establishment. The fact that he's even called a Democrat, the fact that Democrats are lauding and defending him as someone who can beat Trump, who can save democracy, it's insane. I feel like I'm in the twilight zone.
So these are the superdelegates. So this sort of thing, it's right out in the open. And once again, I have to ask the question, which I've asked right in the beginning of this. I've been asking it every so often for the last year or so. What is the Sanders campaign? How are they going to respond when the DNC, once again, steal the election from him? Why isn't he confronting them right now and putting it right out there, calling them out right now for everybody to hear, talking about it whenever he gets a chance, so that it's all out in the open, and it probably won't shame them into stopping, because they're out in the open saying they do not want him to be the nominee, because basically all these people are afraid of their profits. They're afraid of their lobbyist money. They're afraid they're going to lose their lobbyist money. All the corporations that are ripping people off, the health insurance industry, the weapons industry, and all of that, all the different industries that are destroying the planet, they're all afraid of a Bernie Sanders presidency. Now, I know that I've criticized Bernie Sanders on his foreign policy, which is very lacking, but his domestic policy is very good. That means that he would do his best to get Medicare for all for people and all those different things. I'm not advocating any particular candidate, but I am totally appalled at this this so-called all these people conspiring, including the GOP and the mainstream media, both left and right. If you can call them that, they're really just one conglomerate blob of sort of serving the same overlords, really. The mainstream media, Fox News and all of that, MSNBC and all of those different ones are conspiring to do their best to tell as many lies about Bernie Sanders as they can, whatever sticks, whether it's that he's supporting vicious dictators, or that he's a communist, or that he's a Russian puppet, a Putin puppet. They will do, and at some point they'll drag up anti-Semitism, which I think they already have, because he supports the end of apartheid, even though of course he doesn't support BDS. So really, I mean, he hasn't actually called it apartheid, but he says he's pro-Palestinian. He's been sort of, it's taken him a while to get to that position, and that happened because of his people pushing him from the left. I always get flack from people who call themselves progressive when I push Bernie Sanders from the left. Everybody should be pushing him from the left, because politicians don't become more ethical after they get into office. So if you're not pushing him from the left on his foreign policy, then I don't know what to tell you. But I mean, if you cannot be left and not be anti-war, anti-imperialist. Anyway, so it's just appalling though to watch the lengths to which the DNC is going to take this away from Bernie Sanders once again. And I have to ask people, if you are in the Bernie Sanders camp, what are you doing to address this issue? What are you asking? Are you urging Bernie Sanders to say something right now about it? Because if he doesn't say something right now and confront it right now, it's going to be less obvious to the public what's going on. I mean, there are people who can see it already, but it has to be called out in public, what they're doing with the superdelegates and all of that. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to say. I mean, it's laughable how the U.S. empire is always pointing at other countries that that haven't submitted to them, like Venezuela and Bolivia, and telling them that their elections are not transparent and fair, even though they actually are. And yet, the country that probably needs the most scrutiny, literally on voting days, from the international community, it is the US. And that's the truth. Anyway, thanks for watching. My name is Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And till next time, bye for now.